Dave, he's over there, come up. Dave, you come out from BNP Paribas Real Estate. Thank you. Cheers.
Good afternoon all. Thanks for joining Adam and I for the next 30 minutes for a presentation on source to contract and compliance. So I'm David Wilson, a procurement consultant at Touchstone Spend Management. And to my left is Adam Leighton, who's head of procurement at BNP Paribas Corporate. So I understand you've had a choice of rooms, so thanks so much for choosing us. It's all good to have a bit of competition in procurement, isn't it? Got one laugh there. But, so there we go. It's the right button there. So BNP Paribas and Touchstone Spend Management, TSM, have been working together for many years on both P2P and procurement systems. You can see a bit of the story there, the journey. And I'm not going to go through each one at a time, but what it shows here, this is the last 15 years, is a move from a number of things. You've got P2P moving over to procurement. There's different parts of the business. You've got the corporate side of the business, which we kicked off with, over to the property management side of the business. So P2P to procurement, corporate to property management. And also within that procurement side, because obviously that's been much more of a focus the last 5 or so years, is beginning with supply management and contract management and getting that working, and then moving over towards the sourcing elements to fit in between them. And in between all this, there's been a lot of growth for BNP Paribas in the way that's been a lot of growth with TSM. And part of this was an acquisition of Stratton Parker. So it was a big change within the business and integrating that into BNP Paribas. And the systems have to come with it. So obviously the systems of your corporate, your P2P systems, and bringing on with the supplier management and contract management. Now that also has its challenges of being on very small localized suppliers, but also the users as well. A very small local base with very, very sort of high volumes, but very low value. So you can imagine the number of suppliers that they have to deal with. And they've come on that journey with us, and obviously we've got a big future here for e-signatures and Dun & Bradstreet. But what this shows is that that collaborative relationship we built up with BNP Paribas over the past 15 years, it's become a bit more integrated. There's a lot of ICT type enablement. And if you look at the evolution of a supply chain, I don't want to bore you too much about supply chain models, but there's one called Gatuna, which I'll talk to you later if you want to. It's all about being more collaborative with suppliers and customers. So if Adam working with us, he's looking for as much value as we can, but he's doing that with a lot of his suppliers. It's not just us, but it's moving towards, and it's that whole trajectory of being up from traditional purchasing up to that sort of procurement arena, which businesses are trying to do now. Now, obviously there's been a lot of change management here within the business, putting all these systems in, and not just for the acquisition, but putting the P2P system. We all know this change management, bringing in procurement systems, a lot of that has to be done, and we've worked with BNP Paribas to enable that, because we know that end users, suppliers, bringing them to portals is not as easy a thing to do, because there's only 2 things people don't like. That's change and the way things are now. So we have to work out a way to bring them on board, suppliers, users, and over the 15 years we have done that, and the future is some integrations with Dun & Bradstreet, which we saw with Avalia doing as well, and also with e-signatures for DocuSigns. There's plenty more we can do in the future. Sure.
Try not to chip over. Hi everyone. So I'm Adam Leighton, and I head up the procurement function for real estate in the UK. To give you a bit of background, we didn't include the slide because I only got it this morning from our group, but BNP Paribas is an £8 billion company, 65 countries. It's the 3rd largest corporate bank. It's the 7th largest bank in the world. We are the real estate division. We are about 900 million across Europe, and then the UK is about 150 million in terms of revenue. So I am responsible for the corporate supply chain and then the diverse supply chain within that sort of group as well. I provide oversight over 2 divisions in terms of property management, which is our direct divisions, and our rural, and I'll explain about rural and why that's important, because you'll see the diverse supply chain. So I joined in late 2020, and my boss said to me, it's a mess. And so he was very open about it. He said, you can come in and fix it, because we've got a lot of pressure from the group. The group are compliance heavy. They are absolutely legislated, so they drive compliance across the piece from a pound. So we created a very simple strategy, very high-level pictorial. We do it in heat mapping, and we focused on policies and procedures. We focused on supplier sourcing, data and system maturity, and supplier relationship management. Not uncommon themes in the procurement world, but we tried to illustrate it to the business in a very, very simple, high-level sort of pictorial thingy. And then underneath, that underpins it all is group supplier risk management, right? And you will see why that's important in a bit. But so critical to this meeting today is that we soon developed a relationship in terms of system development. You can see we paid for the system for a very, very long time, but we never actually utilised it correctly or really explored the opportunity to leverage our supply chain. What I'd say is I'm rubbish at public speaking, right? So if you've got questions and you need to interject during, just shout, right? Because I will go on forever, right? So I'll hand back over to Dave, and he'll talk a bit more about how our relationship developed and our new strategic objectives and how TSM and us align those together. And then we'll talk more about the compliance element in a minute.
So yeah, a slide here about the relationship that we've developed. One of these, is reviews. With close relationships, a part of this is reviews. So monthly reviews and annual reviews, which we've done recently. So on a review about a month ago, Adam said to me, you're high risk to us. And I was a bit, well, what does that mean? I had to think about it. And before Adam explained, and we can define risk in many, many ways. But with Adam, with his high risk on suppliers, it's because the systems we have are so core to the business and so integral to what they do on all sides, with the suppliers, the contracts, the sourcing, and your day-to-day purchase ordering, goods receipt, and all that good stuff. And we're high risk because we're so integral, but also because of the amount of money he spends with us. And they spend over a certain amount of money, I'm not sure exactly, we become high risk. And that sort of scaredness of your high risk to us became, actually, that's a really good thing that we're in that big segment of your business. But we have a close relationship, we have these reviews, we speak all the time on the side as well. The value we've added working together. So when they made a strategic move with Stratton Parker, it's not easy. And as ISG said, when you've got many local suppliers, it's very hard to bring them onto portals, and you're bringing over users. Stratton Parker's an estate agent, and you've got estate agents everywhere, and bringing those users onto the system. So we've worked and added value with Adam's team to ensure they can use existing systems. And also with moving last year, we started doing quick quotes and sourcings. We reviewed the procurement procedure and processes in order to ensure that the system we've got meets what Adam's requirements are, because obviously it's not just about the system, it's about Adam and his team and the people using it, and also the processes involved. So we've worked closely with that. And then compliance. Adam's going to talk a bit more about compliance. As you can imagine, being a head of procurement in the banking arena, you can have lots of internal and external audit pressures. So Adam's often emailing me, calling me, saying, well, compliance have come up with this, compliance have come up with that. What can we do within the system to ensure he's ticking that box? And that takes the pressure off him. So we work together a lot on doing that, and part of that is supplier due diligence. As you can understand, compliance, due diligence, risk, we need to send questionnaires regularly to suppliers. The software's enabled that, because as Adam's going to show you next, the supply chain is so diverse and so localised that he needs tools enabled to deliver that and keep, ensure he keeps internal and external audit happy, but that he's got successful systems that make his business work.
So this is just a pictorial illustration of the corporate supply chain, and we operate So within UK, we've got 4 different divisions. We've got investment management, we've got commercial, we've got residential, and we've got rural. So residential and rural are effectively, residential is an estate agent, and we're based all across the UK. And then we have rural, which look after high-end, high net worth value estates. So if you think about your country houses and your country manors, so we maintain those estates for people. And with that comes complexity in the supply chain. Okay, so you've got your commercial operating model, which has got very high-end, high-level spend, and then you've got your local, very localized supply chain. We deliberately have a local supply chain strategy. We want to be visible in the community. It is something that our deputy COO and COO are very passionate about, and hence why we get the heat map like that, where you can see we have a very localized population of suppliers. But that creates a lot of complexity, a lot of challenges from a compliance perspective, from a volume perspective, from a consistency perspective, from a quality perspective. So we presented those challenges to TSM and to the business and said, well, what can we do? And this is where we depend upon the tool to bring that consistency. So immediately we developed an approach for high level and low level, very, very simple and initially, just so we can target the different variances in our supply chain and to bring them on board into a consistent and stable solution so we can illustrate what we call our compliance landscape. And why is that important? So we call it, it's either an opportunity or some people see it as doom or a disaster, but we have compliance because we are legislated and we're dominated by the bank. Our financial security assessment is governed by the law. So we have to do everything from a pound from our financial security perspective. It means that we are talking to people that provide ducks in the duck race about their financial security. They have got no concept, no understanding of what we're doing it for. We recently sponsored Purley Way football team with a shirt sponsorship, £600. That hits our high risk because it's over £500, and therefore we are talking about financial security. It's a completely different world, right, from where the bank operate and where we operate. So we take it through, and we've got various different supply risk obligations in terms of subcontractor dependency, sponsorship and patronage. We deem high risk, health and safety, obviously, being a construction company as well as a facilities management company. Know your supplier, again, it's legislated. We have to know that we are not exposed to terrorism, sanction screening, etc., that we have not got conflict of interest, ABC, the list goes on. We segregate sole traders, we segregate GDPR risk, we segregate business continuity risk, we segregate outsourced providers, we segregate CCO, ABC, as I mentioned, and we segregate consultants, because we deem those, or the group deem those, high risk in terms of corruption or fraud, and the list goes on and on and on. And we are audited every month by the internal audit team, and we are audited twice a year by an external audited team. In addition to that, we're also audited on our environmental performance twice a year. I know that the previous gentleman mentioned greenwash. We publish it in our accounts, we publish it to the market. We are not allowed to greenwash. We are audited twice a year in terms of our environmental performance and our CSR. So I will talk about that in a bit. Any questions so far? Does it make sense? But when you work in this environment, it's very, very stringent, very, very difficult. That's why the system helps us to make that consistency, gives us that consistency, and it enables us to engage with suppliers in a simple format. So I go on. So how we approached it. So we took it in 3 phases, really. First of all was to ensure that the SRM module reconciled to the accounting function, so that we knew that our supplier base was accurate and that we were talking about the same population of suppliers. Too often we have it where your accounting function is spending money and it doesn't reconcile to your supplier base on the system. So luckily I'm from an accounting background, so I was a management accountant in my previous life, so I understand the financials. And it enables me to then strip the P&L back down to the basics and put it in the system. And then we structured the system with the help of TSM to make sure that we captured our compliance obligations, and that's what we call our compliance landscape. So we can extract at any point against all of our compliance obligations the landscape in terms of where a supplier is against those obligations. And we can extract that on a daily basis. So you update the system today and it will be up and live for the reporting the next morning. So, and to be honest, from a group perspective, we're ahead of the group in terms of our ability to do that. And it just makes us look good because they're all concerned about compliance. They don't care how much money you spend because they make too much money anyway. But we can demonstrate our compliance landscape. Okay. Phase 2, then we took on the contract challenge. We've got contracts for the Duck Club and all the way up to major contracts with banks. And so again, it's about assessing the challenge correctly, making sure we've got terms of business that are fit for purpose. We started with 1 standard terms. We now have 8 different standard terms of business that we've built into the system. And it just gives us that flexibility to make sure that the contract is fit for purpose, fit for the supplier, etc., etc. And then finally now, we are now working on the more mature procurement activity in terms of SRM and supplier relationship management, and developing those relationships with our key suppliers and exploring how we can evolve along this, the sort of sourcing maturity and a supplier management maturity. So we are now using the sourcing tools in the system. Our population of users have access to the sourcing tools in the system, and it just gives us that consistency, that control, that visibility. So those are the three phases that we took. Go on, yeah, go for it.
So how many users?
So we have a population of users across all of our offices. We have about 1,000 population across the UK. Of that, probably 200 people source and with the supply chain. Okay. Yeah.
How would you differentiate between the sole trader, small business, and a major supplier?
Yeah. Sorry. How do we differentiate? Yeah, it's a good question. So the way we set up the form is so you request a supplier via a supplier request form via our P2P model with Practice. It comes through, and that they will do the critical assessment in terms of who it is, what it is, and what they're trying to obtain. And at that point, then we then structure the PQQ that goes out to the supplier. So that we've got tailored PQQs based on health and safety risk, GDPR risk, etc., and sole trader risk. So then we send those out the appropriate control, and we get the responses back and score it, and then we allow them to trade. So it's a good question. So yeah, so it's an excellent question, because at the moment we're doing our residential business and we get a response rate in residential of about 40%. So we are at that point where we are suffering, and it's one of the things I was going to talk about later is supply fatigue. So we're asking more and more of our supply chain, but then we're cutting their margins all the time. So there's an irony about it. We're making them try and do more, but for less. So we are suffering from that fatigue, and we are changing the way we do it. And the way we are trying to do it is to make it as simple as possible, so for sole traders, it is not the extended PQQ, but we have an obligation from a financial security perspective to ask certain questions, and it's a do not pass go. So we have an agreed date, which is actually February 2024, that if they do not qualify for the PQQ, we cannot trade with them. And that's either from a health and safety or financial security perspective, so we have to kill them off. And again, it's an operational risk for us because we are so local, but that's the journey we're going through. Does that make sense? Yeah. Go.
Do you not get business pushback if you
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So when we started, it was a case of submitting one form and your supplier was in, and you could do it. So it takes a lot of change management, and we've tried again to make it as simple as possible. The form that they have to complete is very simple, but it's only one route into the business. There is no other route into the business, and it's about change management. Principally, they were doing it all by paper anyway, so there was a paper chain, and we've just moved that electronically, and we've provided guidance and coaching and and we've provided the correct tools to help them along that journey. And now, luckily, I say luckily, but there is only one route into the business, so we work closely with finance. There is no way to bypass the system. So as much as they are disgruntled, there isn't any opportunity to do anything different anyway. So it sounds a bit harsh, but in order to manage the risks that we are subjected to, it's important that we have those controls. And it causes a lot of friction, but principally the form takes about 4 minutes to complete once you've got it, and you just coach them to do it, really. Is that fine? So what it has exposed is that our supply chain isn't very mature in terms of data. We don't have visibility all the time of that service level. We report on 3 levels of activity related to the group. So we have a category, we have a family, and then we have a service. The service is a free text field, so you can imagine what sort of quality of data we get in that field. So we are working on that maturity so that we can make sure it's consistent, make sure we have that quality of service description. And then what is exposed also is that we don't have the geographical tags on our suppliers. So they might have a global capability. We don't tag them as global. We don't tag them as local. We don't tag them as... So if we can start to tag our supply chain correctly, it means that users can find the correct sourcing without going to market again and again, if that makes sense. So I've talked about that. So, okay, we'll move on. So how are we using the tool? So this is our quick quotes and sourcing. So you will see a typical, end-to-end sourcing process or procurement process. We are using it to define the requirement. We're using it to register the suppliers. We're using it for our sourcing approach. We're using it for our proposal evaluation. We're using it for our, I say negotiation, but we're also awarding via the system. So complete end-to-end in the system with complete transparency and visibility. We can share our evaluation results instantly. Again, from a compliance and control perspective, it gives us the bank and the group assurance that we are doing it correctly. It's all scored independently, and we have visibility and ultimate sign-off. So from a control and compliance perspective, the group love it. And from my perspective, it gives me that control and visibility all the time. So let's talk about supplier management again, but what it has highlighted is, and where we're a bit light, is from our contract management module and our need to evolve into proper supplier relationship management. So we can do the basics properly, but we're not talking about to suppliers about innovation. We're not talking about the next level of, can you do something different? And that comes in hand with the supplier fatigue, etc., where they're a bit exhausted by the same request for compliance data. But we do need to evolve, and we're trying to evolve from a assurance function to a strategic sourcing function, if that makes sense. So last slide, you'll see this as a common tool within the industry. We are, I would say, leading at assurance of supply. We have got the compliance obligations that lead us and make us probably the leading, I say that, well, I don't say that arrogantly, but probably, it's, we have to deliver the assurance of supply that is far beyond anything that I've ever seen in other companies. So we are at base level very secure in terms of our assurance and our ability to give our supply chain and our customers comfort. But what we're not doing is exploring quality, cost, service and innovation. So we are changing the way we look at the supply chain. Now that we've got assurance in the supply chain, we are now evolving to talk to our key customers about innovation, about new ideas and about unlocking value that we haven't done historically. So we saw it as a longer term journey. We've given the assurance to our customers, our suppliers, etc. But now we have to evolve as a business and as a team to make it more innovative and more value add. So I have absolutely whistled through that. But do you have any questions, or do you want to take?
Brilliant, thanks Adam. Time for some questions for me or Adam, really. I've got one for Adam.
Yeah.
What do you most like working with? Touchstone spend management.
I'm
not going to ask about that position, by the way.
Yeah.
Same answer by the end.
Yeah. So I suppose what happened, as you can see on the journey, is that we started with a very immature system. We started with a very immature procurement approach. And I've worked with the team here and TSM to develop the system. And what they give you is that flexibility, and they give you that ability to recognise the problem. What I should say is that we are one of the only customers where we have to have an on-premise solution. Yeah. So we're not allowed to use the cloud. We're not allowed to use the functionality that exists in the normal practice. We are restricted. We're on-premise. All the doors are locked. So that means that we have to depend upon TSM to be a bit more creative and a bit different. We don't benefit from the wider cloud solution. So they give us that flexibility. And I, like we said, I picked up the phone to Dave at any time of the evening and just said, look, we've got a problem. We've got to report our compliance landscape. What can we do? We had one, 2 days ago, where we just had a call for 10 minutes about the fact that we've got an error in our sourcing tool, and they fixed it immediately. So it was just a case of that flexibility really helps for me anyway. So yeah, that's what I enjoy with.